In this video, we're going to show you how to install the power steering pump on your Cadillac Escalade located on the front side of your engine. Here with the hood open, we're going to go ahead and locate the power steering pump. It's right here on the driver's side of the engine. We're going to go ahead and twist this cap counterclockwise and remove it and set it aside. Now you can see we have an empty container right beside it, and the purpose of this here is we're going to siphon out the power steering fluid as much as we can and put it into that container. Now the reason why we're doing this here is that when we disconnect the hose on the back side of the pump, we don't want to have all this fluid just leaking out all over the place. We are going to put a catch can underneath and some mats to catch any fluid that does run out. Yeah, we'll get a majority of that fluid out. Let's go ahead and remove the container. On the back side of our power steering pump is where our high pressure line goes to, and it's underneath the bracket on the back side of the power steering pump. Now there's a bolt for this bracket that goes to the side of the engine block, and then there are two nuts on studs on the back side of the pump itself. We're going to go ahead and loosen and remove these here. That's going to allow us to get a better angle on removing that threaded line from the back side of the pump. 15 mil socket. You got to remove that bolt. Remove that nut. Now the second nut is actually underneath the bracket on the back side of it. So we're going to use our small extension 15 mil socket. Get to remove that nut. Now on the passenger side of the engine, we have a belt tensioner over here, and we're going to use our 14 millimeter socket on our ratchet, and we're going to loosen this. We're actually going to push down on the ratchet, and that's going to release the tension, and it's going to allow us to go ahead and remove the belt off of this. And release that tensioner. So before you remove your belt completely, it's always a good time to go ahead and use pen and paper or pencil or whatever and mark out where your belt is run. So it comes up and around the alternator, down around the power steering pump, back up and over the water pump, down and around the crankshaft, up into the tensioner, across and underneath the idler here, and back up over the alternator. Remove the belt. Now the power steering pump itself is held on by 3 bolts, and 2 of them are accessible through the windows of the belt pulley itself. 15 mil socket. All right. Now the bottom one here on the lower left is tough to get to. So using our 16 millimeter wrench, I want to go ahead and loosen this. The best way to get this, once you break it free, if you wiggle the hose, the hard line, and you can reach around the backside and unthread it from the backside of the pump, and then wiggle that out and pop that line out like so. You'll pull that up and around. Need to remove the pulley off of a power steering pump here. With the pulley removed, we can get to our last bolt here. On our particular model, there is a wiring harness here that is held on to this stud. So we want to go ahead and pull this off. Now that we have our pump loose here, we need to go ahead and remove this hose as well. We're simply going to use a pair of pliers here. And let's go ahead and pull that hose off, like so. And pull the pump up and out. And before we install the new pump, I want to make sure that you remove the cap off the back side here where the hard line or pressure line is going to be attached. Let's go ahead and lower this down into position. Let's go ahead and position this. I'm going to try and get one of the bolts started here in the pump. I'm going to install our bracket on the back here. Work that around onto the studs. The two nuts on the back of the power steering pump. Just enough to hold it, and then we can go ahead and line up a power steering pump. And then we'll get the last bolt installed. You're just going to kind of wiggle that pump around a little bit to get that to line up. Make sure you have them all started in several threads before you start to tighten them. You don't want to cross thread any of these. Go ahead and snug them down. Now, using your ratchet, you want to go ahead and make sure these are good and tight. So once that's bottomed out, snug them down. Now that we have the pump installed, we're going to install our pulley on the shaft. Install our power steering pulley. We want to make sure it's definitely facing the correct way. Good. Line that up. Now, when we tighten the pulley itself onto the shaft, there's a ridge right here. It's a little rust ridge. And we had tightened the pulley down until the shiny part of the inside of the pulley was covered, and it pretty much stopped at that rust ridge. So we know that we're bottomed out, and our pulley lines up with the crankshaft pulley as well. Go ahead and take that hard line, and we want to just kind of feed that around to the back of the pump unit itself. And you want to reach out and get that nut inserted in and start that by hand. Get that started a few threads. And then once you get that started, we'll come back with our wrench and tighten that down. Now our bracket that we had just thrown the nuts onto, I want to go ahead and loosen that. We're going to need a little bit of flexibility out of this bracket to get our wrench on there for the hard line on the bottom. The reason why we threw the nuts on the bracket was just to hold it in place while we could get the pump installed. So I am going to go ahead and remove those two nuts again, pull that bracket out a little bit. That should allow us to get our 17mm wrench in there. Now if you have a short or stubby 17mm wrench, that's going to be ideal for you. But go ahead and use that wrench there and go ahead and snug this down. I want to make sure that is nice and tight. Go ahead and line your bracket back up. I'm going to install the horizontal bolt, get that lined up. Thread that in. Let's go ahead and reinstall these nuts for that bracket. Go ahead and snug down the bolt. Just going to use my gear wrench on this one here. Okay. Now that we have all three snug, let's go ahead and install the hose on the front of the pump. I'm just going to use our pliers here to open up that clamp and slide that hose on. Install your belt. Go around the crankshaft, that's on the bottom center. Over the alternator. Need to go around the water pump. Back side of the belt around the water pump, and then that's going to loop back around and go down around the crankshaft. So it goes around the crankshaft. It's going to come up to the tensioner. Make sure your belt is lined up on all of your pulleys. Now I have tension holding the belt in place right by the idler pulley. I'm going to use my 14mm socket on the tensioner. Now push down on that tensioner and work that belt down over the idler. Slide that right on and over. And release that tension on the tensioner. Remove the socket. Now you want to go ahead and inspect everything that the belt is run on. Make sure everything that has grooves on it, the belt is on the pulley properly. After inspecting everything, we are good. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and start to fill up your power steering pump. Now in order to fill up the steering system properly, you want to go ahead and twist this cap counterclockwise, remove it. Now on the dipstick itself is going to have a reading. It has add, which is this lower notch right here, and then up here it says hot at this notch. So we are completely empty. You want to use a clean funnel, place it right here, and you want to go ahead and fill this up just a little bit and then install the cap and then pull it back out, and you want to check this here. So what you want to do is probably get this to just above the A on the add section on the dipstick itself. And then you're going to go ahead and close this up after you remove that funnel. Now after you have some fluid in there, you want to go ahead and jack up the front of the vehicle. This is going to be the best option. Jack up the front of the vehicle, start it up. Now it's going to whine. It's going to make some noise because there's air in the system, which is typical. At that point there, let it run a couple moments. Turn that steering wheel lock to lock, left to right, working that system. Then you can go ahead, open up this cap. It's okay to open it up. You're going to inspect it and find out where the level is. You want to go ahead and continuously add this up to the hot mark as the system warms up. Once you get to that point, keep on working that system, working the steering wheel left and right until all the whining and the noises are gone. It will foam up a little bit because of the air in the system. Once that quiets down, you want to go ahead and take the vehicle for a road test. And at that point there, you should be all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.